Hey everybody, Gabe Suarez here. So, real quick, I wanted to do a couple of videos to answer some questions that were posed on my Patreon page. So the first one of these was a discussion of some of the modifications that we've done to the CZ pistol, notably the P01 pistols that I am carrying, that I have selected as my carry pistols for 2022, 2023, and beyond. Primarily, we're talking about the slide stop or slide release lever that comes on these, and usually they're very pronounced, they're very big, and I like to shoot with a very much a thumbs high grip, because shooting well, controlling recoil well, and everything else is more important than speed reloading. Okay, so this is what my grip looks like. All right, so if we have a very pronounced slide release lever here, it really bears on my hand. Okay, now look, I'm not some kind of a sissy guy or anything like that, but why shouldn't we make things comfortable? Okay, one of the things, the salient points about this particular weapon system is that it's very comfortable in the hand, fits like a glove. Okay, so we turned these down. The latest one, it's actually back at my other place up north. It's virtually flat, okay? And it exists to do two things, actually three things. One, holds the barrel in place, okay? That's important. Number two, it may lock open on the last round. Now, we know very well that pistols don't always do this, even though they're supposed to do this. Sometimes they fail to do that, so I don't really look at it as a benefit. And the third thing is, if I manually want to lock this slide open for whatever reason, for inspection, demonstration, what have you, then this lever exists in order to make that happen, okay? I do not use it to reload, okay? The reason for that is I am an advocate of gross motor skills, big motions as opposed to little motions. And the reason is that I have been in high stress situations many, many, many times in my life. And I have found that no matter how much manual dexterity you have in your everyday life, under those circumstances, that manual dexterity will be reduced. We can argue about it all day long. You can come to a training class with me and I'll turn up the heat enough, and I guarantee you I'll make your manual dexterity degrade. Okay, so I take that into consideration. So I use gross motor skills. If I need to, let's say my slide locks open, I do a reload, whatever it is that I'm doing, and I need to drop this slide, I'm going to come over the top and I'm going to do this. Some people call it a slingshot. I don't care what the fuck you call it. It's using the slide to release the weapon back into battery so you can fire, okay? That's a big caveman skill rather than using a little lever here, okay? Now, I have seen people miss those levers. You may be the kind of guy that has been using that lever since Noah, was building a rowboat, okay? And it's always worked for you. Now listen very carefully. Fortuitous outcomes reinforce bad tactics. Just because it's worked for you since time immemorial doesn't mean that there isn't a better way. My job as a trainer, as a thought leader in the industry, is to discover those better ways and to put them in front of people. You can choose to adopt them or you can choose to ignore them. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use those better ways because I want to be the best fighter, the best teacher possible, and I want the Suarez Tactics material to be the best gunfighting system on this planet. And every day that I wake up, I choose to make it better. I make myself better. I make my system better. And so one of the things that I did early on was stop using these competition-based methods to gunfight with, okay? All right, so instead of using the small lever, which can be missed by anyone on earth, okay, and use a caveman system, which is grabbing the slide, cycling it to the rear. As I cycle it to the rear, it goes into battery. It's the same maneuvers that you do when you're loading the pistol, okay? There's one way to do things, as far as my concern, there's one way that I use to do things rather than 5 or 6 and 7 and complicate matters. Very simple solutions. Okay, now to the matter of speed loading, okay, which is why people want to make this thing this big giant lever, okay? Now, the concept of speed loading was never an issue until Jeff Cooper wanted to promote the 1911 over the commonly used revolvers of the era. Okay, Jeff Cooper was influenced heavily by a man named McBride, who wrote a book, A Rifleman Went to War. And in that book, McBride talks about crawling around in the trenches and carrying a 1911 on his back. And one of the things that McBride promoted in the book about the 1911 was that he could very easily remove a spent magazine and replace it with a full magazine, whereas his antagonists, the Germans, whoever, they or his compatriots, they had weapons that weren't as easy to reload. Okay, now, early on in my training career, I want to say, 2001, 2002, in that era, I queried all of the members of my mailing list, okay, which at the time numbered about 50,000. I queried the membership of Warrior Talk, the forum that I used to have as a gathering place and everything else. And what I asked them is this: if you have used a speed reload like they do in the competitive realm in a gunfight, tell me about it. Okay. Now, there were plenty of people that announced that they had done reloads during gunfights. And they dropped the magazine, they put another magazine in and everything else. But I said, wait a minute, hold on, tell me, was this in the middle of a gunfight or was it after the gunfight? Okay. And the number of people that had said, no, I ran out and I needed to keep shooting, so I did a reload like that. Okay. The first thing that I'll say is these gentlemen were very honest with me. And they said at first they didn't realize what had happened. They realized that the gun had stopped working, and they looked at it and they realized that they were empty. So they did a reload at that point. Okay. The number of people that reported that they had actually done that was 2. Okay. So everyone else, they solved the problem with the capacity of whatever they had in their pistol. More BBs is more better. Okay, now we're talking about 15, 16, 18 round pistols that we have today. I think that the necessity for doing speed reloads as they are done in competition isn't as important as it was perhaps even in the 1911 days. Be that as it may, the 2 gentlemen that reported back were using 1911s. Okay. And incidentally, their battles were concluded about halfway through the second magazine, which doesn't even get to the bottom of this particular magazine. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing that was a salient point is that they reported that the weapon stopped working. They looked at the weapon and they realized, oh, now I need to do this reload. So there was a extreme lag time between the perception for a reload and the execution of the reload itself. Okay, so in essence, it was a reactive manipulation exercise, not one that is pre-planned and pre-staged like often happens in the training world and in the competitive world. Okay, now what I'll suggest to you guys is that you review my video on reactive manipulations. In other words, you try to shoot the bad guy, your gun doesn't work, now what? Okay, and I discuss very much a flowchart system where when the weapon stops automatically, without thinking, without looking, you tap racket. If that fixes it, you keep pressing the trigger, keep killing the bad guy. If that doesn't fix it, then you go through the procedure that I discuss, which is, first you do the tap rack, second you reload the gun, third you unload and reload the gun, and that'll fix every single malfunction other than the fact that perhaps the weapon itself is broken. That cannot be fixed in the field. Okay, so let's keep things in the proper perspective. Okay, gunfighting is not gun sport, and gun sport is not gunfighting. I know that rails people and pisses people off, but that is fact. Okay, so that is why I have gotten rid of this bullshit. Okay, and I clear and work and operate my pistol over the top this way. This exists to do only 2 things: lock the weapon open administratively, or hold the barrel in place, and that's about it. Okay, now look, don't be offended if this offended you. That's not my intent. Okay, my intent is to make you better at gunfighting, more survivable, and ensure your victory should Churchill's tap on the shoulder come to you, and you need to express your your martial fervor in the realm of the gunfight. That's all. Okay, I don't have any other agendas or anything else. All right, that's it. Peace out.